For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for more updates.
Hello and welcome to StratNewsGlobal. I'm Nitin Gokhale and I'm standing in for our regular anchor for Talking Point, Amitabh Revi, who is on a field assignment and would surely be back at least next week, if not earlier. So the topic today on Talking Point is China's recent meeting of its top legislators and what is called popularly the two sessions that follows the party congress which took place in October 2022. And with me to discuss what's in store for China and consequently to the world is Mr. Jayadeva Ranade, a familiar face on StratNewsGlobal and someone who watches China more closely than anybody else I know in India. So someone we should hear about what's happening in that country. Welcome to this program, Mr. Ranade.
Thank you, Nitin. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So let's start with what's the message from the two sessions that were just concluded in Beijing. And if you can give us at least a couple of major points that look like takeaways from there.
Well, firstly, it was sort of consolidation of Xi Jinping's third term. He's getting his third term as General Secretary of the party. And the big two, as it is called, the two sessions, they endorsed his re-election, if I may call it that, as President of China, what he described as the most lofty position in China. So that was done. They also endorsed his nominees for the other positions as state councillor and as minister. So he's retained a few, he's added a few. And of course, they re-endorsed or reappointed Chang Yao-sha and He Wai-dong, both the generals in the CMC, in the state version of the CMC.
Right.
So he has consolidated his position there. The only question mark, or rather a very faint question mark, could be on the new vice president who has been appointed, Han Chang, who is not known to have been particularly close to Xi Jinping.
Not his loyalist.
Not his loyalist. So he is vice president. So that effectively puts him out of the running for anything else, but
Right.
he's there. And I think it would be intended to satisfy or to assuage the hurt feelings of the Jiang Zemin lobby, if at all.
Sure.
That was the intention. But I think apart from that, the two things that strike me is, despite what people say, Li Qiang's appointment as premier, I don't think he should be underestimated. He was, after all, party secretary of Shanghai. He's familiar with the entrepreneurs and all there. It is a mercantile state.
Right.
So he's used to handling these things. What got him into bad odor was his faithful implementation of Xi Jinping's directives on COVID.
Zero
COVID.
policy, yes.
But I think otherwise he should bring in some kind of, if I may say, make an attempt to try and get the economy back on track.
Because his press conference seemed very reconciliatory.
Yes, it was. He was not over the bar, over the top. He kept the temperature down, he kept the expectation down.
Sure.
At the same time, he didn't say that 5% is not achievable, but he said it's very difficult to reach there. Right. He's also assured the private entrepreneurs, as you were saying. So I think, there is going to be a definite focus on development, as they call it, and the second will be on stability or security. These will be the two major points. And of course, Li Qiang made a point of saying we'll open up wider, etc.
Right.
So to that extent, I think Xi Jinping has consolidated his position very clearly. He's solidly in place. He's got all his people around him.
Correct.
Which also means he has no one else to blame, really.
So everything will be targeted at
will be targeted at.
Right. So, if you really look at the events post the party congress, it was followed by the sudden reversal of the zero COVID policy. Some called it U-turn, some called it rethink, whatever it may be, but there was a U-turn certainly. And that is now being followed by a little more softer approach, as you brought out just now, and as one reads through. Does it mean that the Xi Jinping-led Politburo Standing Committee is also aware that there is a sense of resentment or sense of disquiet in the population, and therefore they need to play it very delicately?
Yes, I agree with you. In fact, if I may say, that is a very perceptive question also. Economic development has been one of the key factors for the CCP's legitimacy, the Chinese Communist Party. And they have said that we'll improve your lot in life, and that is one of the reasons why you must, accept our leadership.
Yeah.
Now, that has suffered a hit, particularly because of unemployment, even before COVID, because businesses were closing down, and then he targeted the big business, tech business particularly, the tech finance guys. So a lot of unemployment, a lot of businesses shut down. Then COVID was another whammy.
Right.
And COVID also triggered a lot of anti-China sentiment globally.
Sure.
So the markets in Europe and USA have not opened up to Chinese products the way they were earlier.
Right.
And they don't seem to be showing any signs of that. So that will put China in a difficult situation. The second are the sanctions that the US has hit China with, and they're increasing. That is also going to create a lot of problems. In fact, a pointer to that was the fact that during this NPC session, they also said that they're going to lay off 5% of the central government employees.
Sure.
Which is a large number when you consider
the absolute numbers.
Absolute numbers. So that's a large number. And they have not restored the salaries of the government employees that was cut by 30%. Nor have they restored the budgets of all the ministries, I'm saying all the ministries, that were cut over the last 2 years.
Right.
But certainly we have seen science and technology getting a boost. We've seen defense getting a boost. We've seen public security getting a boost. All three anticipated.
Yes.
And agriculture sort of basically remaining stable.
Right.
So I think these will be the focus areas of the new government, and particularly science and technology.
So that's interesting, because one of the terms used by Li Qiang was also about high development.
High quality.
High quality development, high quality development. Which means that they are realizing that just absolute numbers in the economy or mindless GDP growth is not something that can be sustained. So they need to take it to a quality level, a different quality. How will that be achieved? Or you think China is already well ahead of most countries as far as S&T, science and technology is concerned?
They've put in a lot of money into science and technology. They've got specialized centers which are looking at different aspects of science and technology. Right. So I would say they're well ahead in certain areas. But things like, high design or high-end chips, wafers, etc., they are not.
Right.
In fact, they compare well with other countries that are not producing it, but that's about it. And they're doing it in large number. Correct. But the quality remains with the US.
Right.
And
the innovation remains with the
innovation remains with the US. So, and now with US, got TSMC into the US.
Yes.
Another 2 years, 3 years, they'll start production.
Sure.
US will be the supplier for the world, in fact, because everyone else is...
And also the CHIPS Act makes it difficult for the Chinese.
Yes, and people will be wary of buying it from the Chinese because their credibility is short. Right. So, that's going to be another problem. Yeah. So, high quality development, certainly they're looking at. But I think their focus is to make China, as they say, a great power by 2049.
Right.
And for that, they have to be technologically advanced. And that is going to be the thrust. Even for their military, a lot of it is technology, to make it technology enabled. I don't know how they'll do it, but they're working on that.
Sure.
So these are it's a big thing. They've made science and technology now, instead of the Ministry of Science and Technology, they made it a commission, thereby giving it more powers and putting it directly under the state.
So mission mode kind of.
Mission mode.
That's what they've done. But talking about the military, while Xi Jinping keeps exhorting them, telling them that they're to be prepared for war, short, swift wars. Earlier he used to speak, he doesn't speak about that, but he speaks about higher standards, enhanced standards to win wars. And I think that's the deadline is 2027. And also, so there are two questions here. So what does that mean? Is it a warning to the world that we are getting ready? Our military is prepared to take on the world, or at least the major rivals like the United States and others, if it's on Taiwan or otherwise? And how do they deal with the fact that their defense minister is a sanctioned person in the United States? So two questions related to that.
Well, let me take the defense minister first. He is the person who since 2006 has been, working in the aerospace industry, rocket force, strategic support force, etc. So he's got a strong background in science and technology.
Right.
And his appointment to the Central Military Commission and as defense minister would, I expect, mean that a lot of money would be put into science and technology, defense science and technology.
Right.
He's being sanctioned by the US. I think they have appointed him despite that. So in a way, it's putting the United States in a spot that if your defense secretary wants to come and meet his counterpart, then you're meeting him.
Sure.
So I think we'll see how that plays out in future.
Absolutely.
At the moment, the relations are not at all good. So I don't see that happening. But this is one thumbing of the nose, if I may say. The second is, as you said, about preparedness.
Yes.
I think that's a big issue for them. They are talking about improving the training, building up the capacities, about making them war prepared, the PLA, which is joint operations, using
wars.
intelligentization, AI in things, etc. I don't know how far they have achieved or how far up the ladder they've gone. But the number of exercises and all that I see taking place indicates that they still have a distance to go.
Right.
And in this context, I'll point to the fact that Taiwan is one of the major issues that they're looking at. Second is us. And I don't think we should confuse saying that they are only looking at Taiwan. Both are on
Simultaneously being
both are on
looked
the
at.
anvil.
Yes.
But Taiwan is a problem for them because though the nearest point is about 10 kilometers off Fujian province, an amphibious operation is always tricky.
Very.
That's what all the people say. And then there would be a hesitation to some extent, I'm not saying too much, some extent to shed Chinese blood.
That's right.
I mean, they've shed their own, so it doesn't matter. But,
Exactly. No, but also interestingly, I'll come to that later, but you finish this. Then I'll talk.
So there will be a hesitation. And the biggest hesitation is, will or will not the US intervene?
That's right.
So the US has kept a strategic ambiguity.
Yes.
But, these guys, I think, are waiting for an opportunity.
Sure.
And in this context, what I would say is that Xi Jinping has made, if you recall, at this NPC session and at the party congress, fairly assertive statements that reunification will happen.
Right.
Now, for a man to say that, he can only be confident about his term.
Sure.
So, is it that he is setting a deadline, that by the end of my term, I will do something? In which case, it opens up a number of interesting prospects.
Of course.
Whether he'll go for Taiwan itself, whether he'll go for an outlying island. Right. These are all things that come up in
That's true. But if you go by the press conference of the new premier, he was quite reconciliatory towards Taiwan, saying that we must promote people-to-people contact, businesses from Taiwan must come. After all, we are brothers of the same, he didn't say same blood, perhaps. We said Chinese people on both sides of the straits are of the same blood. So like what you just said about, shedding the blood. So maybe there could be reluctance on that part, or there must be some kind of reservation or some hesitation there. So we don't know. But since you spoke about India and Taiwan, and this is an interesting debate which always elicits different responses. Whether India is the first target or primary target, or Taiwan is. And you already answered about Taiwan, that it's difficult amphibious operations. But going by events that have happened in Ladakh and the kind of stand India has taken, would that hesitation also creep in as far as India is concerned, or you think he's prepared to take that risk?
I think the two are slightly different.
Right.
In the Taiwan's case, there is an American factor and the uncertainty surrounding that. Secondly, as the similarity in both is to use his language, Xi Jinping's language from the 20th Party Congress. He's shaping the environment.
Sure.
So he started shaping it in the Taiwan state by sending 30, 40, 50 aircraft, ships, etc. Thereby making it appear that anything can happen anytime. Whether it happens or not is another matter. Here, he's shaped the environment, I would say. He's already brought his troops in.
Sure.
There's 70,000 on each side sitting there now. he's got the entire 4,057 kilometers which he can open up anytime or start doing, like we saw in Tangsel.
Yeah.
So here, I think he doesn't have an American factor in the back. I mean, yes, American technology help,
That's
etc.
okay. Intelligence will
That kind of. But ultimately, the fighting will have to be done on our own.
Yeah.
So I think if he feels strong enough, or if he feels threatened enough internally,
Right.
then yes, he might try something fresh with us.
Right.
It's an easy target.
Sure.
Easy means they're already deployed.
Yeah.
But I think he would be weighing the options that if he tries something, and if the Indians react or retaliate, which they have not till now, but if they do, then he runs the risk of a bloody nose, like what happened in 79 with Vietnam.
Right.
So he's got that worry.
Correct.
So my own sense is that he will, if he has to try something, it will be a small operation where he can achieve a quick victory or claim it as a victory, whether he achieves it or not. Something like that.
Okay.
But I think that, yes, it will be easier to do something vis-a-vis us than to do it.
In Taiwan. But also maybe the Indian elections next year, general elections, will also play a part in his decision making if he wants to keep the country off balance, or the leadership in India to be under pressure. Maybe that is a window that he would look at.
Yeah, quite right. In fact, they have been saying it that till next middle of next year
Right.
is a window when they have.
Okay.
And they have also been saying that India's rise, and they put a date on it. They said after 2014. So that only means with the present government coming in. So India's rise is something that bothers them.
Right.
And they have been quite explicit about that.
In their article.
In their
analysis
articles,
and
yes.
all that?
Including by the Chinese Institute for Contemporary International Relations,
Right.
which is actually the 11th Bureau of the Ministry of State Security.
Okay.
So they've also come out with
So
that.
it's official almost.
It's official.
Yeah.
And, this, by saying things like this,
Yes.
what they're saying is actually that the problem is not just the border. It is the government and its ambitions.
And also the
And our
fact
rights.
that- yeah,
Our rights.
Yeah, and
So that is
preordained rights.
Yes,
perhaps.
that is right.
That's where it is. But let me move away from India, Taiwan, and China. Let's look at the US-China first. I think the premier again mentioned that the so-called decoupling between US and China is just a hype. Is that so, or do you think the US is deliberately working on a strategy to decouple?
I think the US is very seriously working on a strategy. It is going to take time because they're very deeply intertwined with the Chinese,
Right.
with China. Their companies are reluctant to pull out because it means the loss of a lot of money.
Sure.
So they'll have to look for new markets. But what they will try and do is cripple China in certain technology sectors where China will be hobbled. I think that will be their first aim.
Right.
But if I may speculate a little bit, my own hunch is that the relationship is sliding so rapidly. We saw an instance when, because of the spy balloon, US Secretary of State Blinken didn't go. Though the Chinese held out the hope that he will meet Xi Jinping.
Yes.
But he just said no. Now, that shows the extent of suspicion in the United States and the hesitation to deal with China.
Sure.
I think the Americans will, if I may apply a bit of a psychological this thing on it, will not be willing to accept Chinese sitting and telling them what they should do. Something that they've been doing now for the last over 100 years, 200 years. So they will have to contain China. And to my mind, there's only one way that can happen, which is if they have a kind of a military showdown, not a full-fledged, but some kind of an incident where Xi Jinping is put to the test, whether to retaliate or not. And if he retaliates, of course, the Americans will be ready and waiting. So what will he do? So I think something like that is what we will see.
Yes. And that could possibly be a trigger for...
Yeah, and I would say within the next year or two.
Okay, that's quite definite. The other thing that the Chinese are now sending signals through, that they are willing to be bigger players on the global stage, or at least in West Asia. So what happened between Saudi Arabia and Iran, and they very openly claiming this, although discerning observers now say that it was Oman and one more country played a major part in getting these countries together, but China just put a gloss over it, or at least provided the venue. So that notwithstanding, China has announced its intention of playing a bigger part and becoming a kind of a major power who can mediate between two warring factions or two warring nations. So how do you see that? Are they going to do it more often in, say, Africa and Europe? How does it pan out?
Yes, I think I go back to what Xi Jinping said, in fact, not at this party congress, the earlier one, that he wants China to be a major power with pioneering global influence, which means influence international events, set up international organizations like the UN. That is his intention. Now, don't forget that just recently he went to Moscow with a peace plan. So that was an attempt. It didn't fly, but he tried it. Then he's pulled this off, or at least he claims to have pulled it off. He will certainly look for other opportunities to portray himself as the leader. If you go back to the olden days, leader of the third world or whatever.
The Middle Kingdom.
Middle Kingdom. And there I think, our Prime Minister's effort at using G20 as a platform for the global South, voice for the global South, would have worked with the Chinese.
Yes.
But I think the Chinese will try that. But they'll have a problem in the sense that their credibility is in doubt. I think most countries have a doubt about how trustworthy the Chinese are. And their role will be limited in areas where the US is either slow to react or is not interested.
Right. So, yeah, you're right, absolutely, because if you look at what happened in Afghanistan over the past 2 years, when the US withdrew, there was a hope, and there was I'm sure, hope in China, and there was a desire in Pakistan that China plays a bigger role in Afghanistan and sort of takes the leadership there. That hasn't really worked there. So that is one example of what you just said. But one final question on this. So how should India play? Because India is in a very difficult position, because on the one hand there is Russia, where India knows its inevitability and keeping the ties robust and open with Russia. But a Russia that is subordinate to China is not in India's interest. Do you think Russia can be subordinated, or do you think there's going to be another friction point there which India can play on?
Well, I think, and on the Afghanistan part, I think China and Pakistan were waiting for the Americans to pump the money in, which they didn't. And so, therefore, they've both been stymied. On the Russia-China, it's, I think, a serious concern, and should be a serious concern, for two reasons. One is, I think Russia itself, its capacity is getting degraded. Capacity to produce military hardware, which we have been buying, is getting degraded. And I think it's timely that we started diversifying. It's also timely that we are now started indigenizing our weapons production. I think we need to speed it up. And I think I mentioned at one of the programs earlier that I don't see why we need to take so much time to produce one aircraft or whatever. We should be rolling them out, if necessary, double the number of lines and have more people. It'll help the unemployment problem. That's one. The second, I think Russia getting subordinated, it is already to an extent dependent on China. Financially, it is dependent on China for labor in its east. It's dependent on China for consumer goods. So, whether we say it or not, this dependency will mean that China will start dictating to it more. It may not happen right now, but it will happen. And the Chinese tendency also is such that they will not treat it as a partner. Maybe as long as Xi Jinping is there, people are saying he's invested so much, and he looks up to Putin. For a while maybe. But then when he finds that Putin is weakened and broke, then, it's China's turn. It also means, of course, at that point in time, that the West will turn all its attention on China, which will be the largest communist country still standing. So they will get after them. And that will be his worry. But I think with Russia and China, for us, I don't see it as good news at all. In fact, I think, we need to keep our ties with Russia, but we certainly need to hedge our bets, and very, very quickly.
Well, that's, I think, a good cautionary remark to end the program on. And thank you very much for this insight on where China is headed after the 2 sessions. Now truly set for this 5-year journey under Xi Jinping's 3rd term.
Yes.
We'll see how it pans out, because this must be his most challenging term. If you really look back in the last 10 years, what he has done and what he wants to achieve in the next 5 could be a vast difference between his desire and what he achieves finally. But we'll watch and see, and then we'll have more occasions to discuss all this. But thank you very much for your time. That was Mr. Jayadeva Ranade speaking to us on the aftermath of the 2 sessions in China and the consequences for the world and the country itself. As I mentioned, I'm standing in for Amitabh Revi on this program this Friday on Talking Point. He will be back next week. Until then, goodbye.